To save money, Chinese white-collar workers flock to wholesale markets instead of shopping malls. China's military aircraft, tanks destroyed in Hebei flooding. Can China reinvigorate its housing market? It's all covered in today's China Truths. To save money, Chinese white-collar workers flock to wholesale markets instead of shopping malls. As China's economy is declining and consumption weakens, more and more white-collar workers in Beijing no longer visit shopping malls, but turn to wholesale markets to seek bargains and find ways to save money. According to Reuters, Amy Zhang is a middle-class woman in Beijing. The 35-year-old teacher used to buy branded fashion from shopping malls. But now, in a waning economy in China, she and other middle-class Chinese have to move to shop at one of Beijing's most famous wholesale markets, Dalian Shuguanchin. Zhang also saw bargains at the Beijing wholesales market. She sifted through a pile of clothes priced between 15 and 50 yuan, or $2 to $7. She said that she used to love buying branded clothes, but some of her friends were worried about losing their jobs, and it also affected her buying decision. Dalian Shuguanchin is a super complex with thousands of stalls selling everything, such as clothes, shoes, and accessories. It is usually frequented by tourists, students, migrant workers, and retirees looking for cheap goods. Now, once rich shoppers are joining the bargain hunters. It underscores the weak household demand in China, which has become a major drag on the world's second-largest economy. In China, more than 1 in 5 young Chinese remain unemployed. The youth unemployment rate in urban areas has climbed to such alarming levels that the government decided to stop publishing the relevant data this summer. While the job market is highly uncertain, a lot of companies are cutting wages, so households' confidence and spending power are falling. In August, consumer prices in China rose only 0.1% year-on-year, in sharp contrast to the surge in inflation in most other major economies after the COVID pandemic. This really reflects the confidence issue among Chinese consumers. According to Becky Liu, head of China macro strategy at Standard Chartered, the problem for China is that there's no particularly good way to resolve that now. She explained that if the Chinese government wants to restore confidence, it must either significantly stimulate the real estate industry, or it has to provide cash directly to households, but those options are available yet. China's real estate sector, one of the pillars of the economy, is struggling with massive debt. Meanwhile, global luxury companies such as LVMH and Gucci have been banking on China to help boost their overall sales this year, but with the middle class trying to save their money, those companies could face problems. However, this behavior of white-collar workers hunting for bargains is a boon to small traders in Dalian Shuguanchin. A vendor named Yunshan said her shop in the market has many customers, so she was struggling to keep her online shop afloat. She said that she is too busy, so she has to refuse requests from online customers, because she does not have time to arrange delivery. Another merchant surnamed Wang said that there are too many customers in his store most days, and he has to stand outside the store to monitor customers. He noticed that some of his customers look more wealthy than usual. One of his customers is a rich lady. She used to go to Japan for shopping, but now she comes to his store. China's military aircraft, tanks destroyed in Hebei flooding. Record flooding in China's Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region in July not only hit local residents hard, but also damaged tanks and aircraft at the communist regime's military garrisons in Baoding and Zhuozhou. According to internal documents of the ruling Chinese Communist Party, CCP, the regime had secretly planned to use the populated Zhuozhou and Baoding areas as floodwater discharge zones to save the newly planned political center of Xiong'an. However, when it came time to act on the plan, authorities didn't send out notifications of the discharge in time, which led to devastating losses among the people, businesses, and the CCP's military assets in the region. Chinese authorities reported that at least 78 people died because of the floodwaters. The actual death toll is likely much higher but difficult to determine, given the authorities' history of underreporting. Mr. Zhao Lanjian, a former mainland Chinese investigative reporter who currently lives in the United States, said, in order to implement Beijing's instructions of protecting the Xiong'an new area, the new political hub planned by Chinese leader Xi Jinping, authorities proposed an on-site flood discharge plan that would open the river banks in the midstream areas of Hebei province, but Mr. Xi didn't make any comment on it. Mr. Zhao said, Premier Li Chang thought that the situation was urgent, citing what his contacts in China have said. Since she previously made the instruction to protect Xiong'an, Li followed the on-site flood discharge plan. Unexpectedly, the troops stationed there were also flooded. She was furious when he learned that Beijing's elite troops had been flooded. Wang Hua, a pseudonym, a local resident who witnessed the devastation, also said, the unit that was flooded this time in Zhuozhou is Troop 66289. It's located next to the Zhuozhou branch of the China Institute of Labor Relations and the experimental field of China Agricultural University. It's now called the XX Group Army Tank Brigade, which is the unit that defends Beijing. Because of this flood, their tanks were almost all destroyed. There is also an aviation brigade in Zhuozhou, and the flooding there was the worst. It was like a swimming pool. The water poured directly into it, and the terrain is very low. Those aircraft have been flooded and have to be replaced. There is also a Baoding Aviation School in the main urban area of Baoding, and the entire military compound was basically flooded. Because of the flooding of military facilities in Zhuozhou and Mr. Xi's discontent, Mr. Li offered his resignation. It's been reported on social media. CCP internal documents. Internal CCP documents show, in order to protect Beijing and Xiong'an, Hebei province had already deployed the flood storage area in Baoding and Zhuozhou before the flood. An urgent document was issued on July 29, titled Notice on the Implementation of the Work on Cleaning Up and Remediating Problems that Obstruct Flood Discharge, by the Zhuozhou City Flood Control and Drought Relief Headquarters and the Zhuozhou City River Chief System Leading Group. It emphasized that to ensure the safety of river floods, water-blocking obstacles in all towns and villages must be totally cleared immediately to be ready for floods. On July 30, the Hebei Provincial Flood Control and Drought Relief Headquarters issued a special notice-level document, titled Emergency Notice on the Transfer of Personnel in Flood Storage and Detention Areas, for evaluation. The document was simultaneously distributed to the Langfang, Baoding, and Xingtai municipal governments, as well as the Xiong'an New District Management Committee in Hebei. Later that day, the Zhuozhou municipal government received the notice from the Hebei province's government through the Baoding municipal government. However, in the Hebei government's video conference on province-wide flood control on the same day, authorities required all meeting participants to strictly keep the information confidential. As a result, except for a few villages that received evacuation orders 2 hours before the floodwater release, people in most places in Hebei weren't warned. A CCP official in Hebei who knows about the internal meetings and notices took the risk to inform Mr. Zhao in the United States 2 days before the floodwaters were discharged. Mr. Zhao said, with verified internal information, the Hebei Provincial Department of Water Resources reported to Hebei Province to prepare for a flood greater than the record one in August 1996. He said that officials within the system already knew about the floodwater discharge plans, but that officials had no way to pass that information to the common people in the local area, so he hoped his warning message would be taken seriously on international media platforms. However, people in the Zhuozhou and Mentugu districts in Beijing stated on various channels that the authorities released floodwaters without notification, causing many casualties and property loss. Beijing hasn't updated the death toll from the flooding. Can China reinvigorate its housing market? Under enormous pressure from local governments starved of land revenue, developers staring at bankruptcy, and homeowners facing falling prices for the first time in history, the regime in Beijing is rolling out a raft of measures to try and reinvigorate China's real estate sector. How will these measures affect a sector responsible for about 30% of the economy? Mr. Christopher Balding, a specialist about China, was a professor at the Fulbright University Vietnam and the HSBC Business School of Peking University Graduate School. In his article Can China Reinvigorate Its Housing Market, published September 5, Mr. Balding presented an insightful analysis for the question. China's real estate economy works in a giant self-fulfilling circle. Local governments sell off local land rights to developers, raising, on average, about 30% of the government revenue and, in many cases, more than 50%. Lacking other stable means to increase revenue, local governments are desperate to keep real estate-driven revenue churning. The real estate development industry, which is effectively bankrupt, is starved for buyers to sell its inventory of unsold and unfinished homes to, hoping to reduce its enormous debt. Households in China who now, on average, carry more debt than Americans and more than most households in developed countries are begging for relief. The question is, what, if anything, will those measures accomplish? The measures announced by Beijing focus on lowering interest rates for homeowners, reducing their monthly payments, and making it easier to buy a home. For example, new policies allow existing homeowners to qualify for the benefits accorded to first-time homebuyers, such as reduced down payments and lower interest rates. Another policy measure allows existing homeowners to refinance into lower-rate mortgages. According to Chinese real estate brokerage, homeowners could reduce their monthly payments, on average, by about 850 yuan, or about $120. To the average urban resident with an average monthly income of about 3,750 yuan, an 850 yuan monthly cut would be significant. How will the people respond? So the question becomes, what will be the behavioral response to these policies by Chinese homeowners? Put another way, will they jump back into the real estate market buying homes, and what will they do with extra money in their pocket? I should caution readers that predicting behavioral responses to changes in government policy is hard and risky, but let's put forth some informed analysis based on how we've seen Chinese homeowners behave previously. The first question is, will Chinese home buyers jump back into the market, swallowing a significant amount of unsold inventory? This seems very unlikely. In the past few years, prior to the current market slowdown, most homes sold in China were for second, third, and fourth homes, not the primary residence of buyers. Put another way, there appears to have been very little primary demand from buyers even before the current issues. Coupled with the fact that there's an ongoing major price correction that officials are trying to prevent, buyers seem unwilling to buy at prices that would satisfy real estate developers, Communist Party cadres, or sellers. Now that homeowners have been burned with stagnant prices and are enormously indebted, there's likely little appetite for jumping back into the market. While there's likely to be some small effect, we'll unlikely see a significant change in the broader market. Will homeowners use the income boost from lower interest payments on their homes? Based on how Chinese consumers have behaved, we can expect that income to be split in some portion between paying down debt, savings, and consumption. What the exact proportion will be is largely speculative. Still, I would expect paying down debt and increased savings to be the two biggest responses by Chinese consumers, with the boost to consumption being the smallest portion. With unemployment pressures, a rapidly aging population, and heavily indebted households, it's difficult to see this income boost resulting in significantly higher household consumption. Chinese households that don't see a strong economy and rapidly rising asset prices are unlikely to go on a spending spree. The effect of a new policy. Although this is unlikely to cause a significant change to the Chinese real estate market or consumer spending, this is actually reasonably smart or the least bad of available policy choices from Beijing. However, it does carry some significant risks. Beijing knows that real estate developers and related sectors present an enormous risk to financial stability. Authorities are hoping that easing requirements on real estate consumers will effectively bail out developers by buying unsold homes and allowing them to finish the units that remain unfinished. It should also help the banks that have faced rapidly rising foreclosures and delinquencies on mortgages. It acts as a type of tax cut by putting more money in consumers' pockets without drawing from already strained public funds. Although it's unlikely that consumers will bail out the developers, it may at least by some time help the banks a little and provide a small boost to spending. The risk Beijing is running here is a macro risk. The Chinese continue to use a variety of inventive methods to move money into US dollars. With the yuan falling and under enormous pressure to fall further, lowering interest rates requires even tighter capital controls to limit hidden outflows to prevent a downward spiral. Beijing has built its entire economy by attracting large foreign investments, running massive trade surpluses, and keeping savers' capital domestically to fund its enormous infrastructure model. It'll be vital for Beijing to prevent that money from leaving to prevent additional pressure on the yuan. The larger long-term problem is, given Beijing's long-term low-interest rate stance, how does it reconcile this with higher U.S. interest rates that, even after they come down in the next few years, will, at best, only equalize, lacking the 3 to 4% premium China enjoyed that allowed it to attract capital for many years? Overall, this isn't a poor policy, but it fails to address the fundamental structural problems and seems unlikely to make a significant change. This isn't a bad policy, but it simply can't correct a falling population, massive home oversupply, and household indebtedness. Those problems remain. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.